There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel, another Friday Reads. I haven't filmed in this spot for a while because this library room was all in even more chaos than usual because I had to move everything for that silly cockroach treatment that I didn't need in my apartment, and I finally started to move things back where they go, and I can now film in this space. Isn't that fascinating? I've had a really great reading week. Lots to tell you about that. I also want to let you know that there will not be a Friday Reads next week. Next weekend I'm out at the farm for my dad's memorial service, so I just am not going to try to do one next weekend for obvious reasons. So I'll see you again in 2 weeks. I may get organized enough to have some video content to go up on Friday or over the course of next weekend, but I will play that by ear. In the meantime, today I have a lot to tell you, and I've got my microphone working great again. I am so stupid about this kind of thing that I didn't realize that I had turned the volume down on it. Some of my students were complaining during my Zoom lessons last week. I can't really hear you. But then 5 seconds later they said, oh no, it's back. And I looked at it and what? I have no idea what's going on. And you will notice in the mystery guest spot that every time I start to talk, the first 3 or 4 seconds, my voice is very faint and then it goes up to normal. And it's just because in handling my microphone, I had turned the volume down and I had no idea how to turn it back up. So the book review video I put up the other day, I listened to it after I filmed it. I couldn't hear myself at all. So then I finally hunted up the guidebook for the microphone and realized, oh, you just have to slide your finger across to lower and raise the volume. So I refilmed that. And now I'm always watching, where's the volume at? So I think you should be able to hear me pretty well now, but you're going to be straining your ear for the first 3 seconds every time I speak. Luckily, you don't care what I'm saying or asking my mystery guest. She is coming through loud and clear, and what a fascinating mystery guest she is. Let's meet her. And today's mystery guest is the Irish writer Orla Owen, joining us from London. How exciting to have you on my channel, Orla.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So wonderful to meet you. Orla Owen is the author most recently of a really enigmatically titled and I think quite enigmatic novel in its own right called Christ on a Bike. Just came out in, I believe, January of this year. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
I knew it was coming. Orla is a good self-promoter on Twitter, but lots of other people are always promoting her. And Covery Madavan was on my channel as a mystery guest just a few weeks ago and raved about Christ on a Bike. So, Orla, tell us about your most recent novel.
Thank you. Christ on a Bike is a tale about a character called Keris, who gets an unexpected inheritance, and which she's thrilled about, but there are some rules attached which seem very simple, but they make life very complicated. And the main rule is basically that she becomes very wealthy in her own right, but she's not allowed to share it. So it's what that does to her life and her relationships. And she also, as one of the rules, has to move to Wales. My husband's Welsh and I love Wales. So it's set on the west coast of Wales in Pembrokeshire, near one of my favourite beaches. She moves there to this beautiful house, but it's how life pans out from there with these rules. And she starts to get a bit paranoid. Are people watching her? Is she being followed by a character on a bicycle? Is it just that she's lonely and imagining things? And yeah, that's the story.
So, how strict is that rule about not sharing? So she can't share it with like a spouse or a child or a parent even?
No, so she's got no parents, but she has a sister, but she can't share it with her. You can give gifts up to the value of £50. So if it's someone's birthday, you can buy them something for £50, or if she wants to say thank you for something. She can also have people to stay, but only for 3 nights at a time. So she's in this big house, but she can't let friends who need a roof over their head come and live there. That's not allowed.
Well, that is a fascinating premise. Can you tell us more about the origin of this premise? How did this come to you? Did it come from some personal experience or?
No, yeah, I just the premise started first of all because one of the other things actually is she has no emotional attachment to the person who died, so that was really important. There was no grieving with that character, and I'd had the idea of an open coffin and just a story starting like that for quite a long time, and I kept wrong footing. I couldn't get the voice right for it. And then I just started to write in COVID, actually. I wrote this and it started to flow. And then obviously, I was trying to think of different things you could do with it to make a story of it. And the rule, I don't know, it just came to me. I just started writing and just imagined this solicitor who is so lovely and wanting to look after her, but he just has to make sure these rules are enforced. And then it just went out from there and started involving other villagers. Or does it? Or is she imagining it?
There are really interesting anecdotes that I've heard over the years about the conditions that people put on for their heirs. One of my favorites is somebody who hated his children so much and he was a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever, and he died in about 1920, and he left all of his estate to his descendants 4 generations later, and nobody before then could get a cent.
Oh, that's interesting. Isn't
Yeah,
that
wouldn't that make an
interesting?
interesting
What a
novel?
bastard.
Yes.
That's so cruel. I think it is interesting with wills. It's been interesting doing events because lots of people have lots to talk about and everyone's got a story about wills. And I think it's that thing of it's really the opposite of what that man did. It's the last kind thing you can do on earth, isn't it? Help people that you love or around you or near you, but you can also cause a lot of pain. You have a lot of power if you own something. So it's that thought of it, that's really mean, isn't it? That's really cruel. That would really mess you up, I think.
Do we get to know the guy who died, or whoever it was who died and left his estate in this particular way? Do we get to know a lot about him?
No, he's just there for the
He's just
start.
there.
But what becomes clear at the end, I'll try not to give much away.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm writing a sequel. So
Okay, well, do we? I don't want to know the answer. I mean, this is a yes/no question, not a. I don't want you to tell us the reason
okay.
he made such a strange bequest or such strange conditions. But do we ever find out why he did that? Why did he make such strange?
Yes, I think I
Okay,
can tell you
okay.
that actually. It's one of the rules too. You must be buried in an open you must be in an open coffin in the church, and the main thing is whoever comes and prays over your soul inherits what you've left them. They have to write their name in a book. So and she has to agree to do that when she dies.
So it's pay it forward, so to speak, or
Yeah.
inherit it forward. Oh, that's fascinating. Now, I was nervous about this book because of its title until Covery assured me that Jesus Christ was not a character in the novel.
No.
He's not.
He's a boy on a bicycle in a red top, which is on the cover, isn't it? So she gets slightly paranoid, worrying, is she being judged? So she has moments of not madness, but just sort of, overthinking things and starts to wonder who is he, because he's got a beard and long hair and, just reminds her of childhood stories.
Is that an expression, a British expression, Christ on a bike? It sounds like it could be an expression kind of like Jesus Christ or for God's sakes. Like, is it actually an expression?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Not really English, I would say, more Welsh and Irish. So my husband's from Cardiff, so he would say it when the kids were little. If you're like hurrying them up, it's the equivalent of, for God's sake, Christ on a bike. Yeah. And in Ireland, it's sort of pretty popular too. It's interesting because it's a phrase I've known for so long. That was there the minute I'd done the first chapter. I knew what the title would be. I didn't think that anyone would think otherwise because it was so clear to me what it was. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And because I'm not, from a different part of the English speaking world, thought, oh, I don't want to read a novel where Jesus Christ is a character.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
No,
I can't wait
not
to
at
read
all.
this. One of the things I do regularly on my channel is book haul videos where I just introduce the books that have come into my home recently that I haven't read yet. And so I just put one up 4 or 5 hours ago in which I talked about your book not having read it yet, and I read the introductory 3 paragraphs, and I didn't want to stop reading. So, yeah, yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
So this is your third novel, and I believe it's your first one with Blue Moose Books, which is quite a famous, fabulous small press in the UK.
Yeah, I love them. Absolute dream come true to get a publishing contract. The first book I read was Rónán Hession's Land and Hungry Poor. And I was like, oh my God, I just adored it. And I was like, I've never read anything like this. So I started reading some of their back catalogue. And then there was The Man with the Seagull on His Head by Harriet Page and The Secret of Not Drowning by Colette Snowdon. And I read them and just thought, wow, these are my time. I love the voices and stories and tightness of all these books. And they were all different. And I was like, who are these people? And I didn't realize publishers exist that you could submit directly to, which is what I did with this. So that was a real like, oh, this is amazing. And just led me to a whole world of new books, which was wonderful. That was Book Twitter, actually, that did that.
Yes, and I've been following you on Book Twitter for several years. And I think it's because of Rónán Hession. He tweeted you or commented on one of your books, and I started following you. And somewhere in and amongst there, I acquired and still haven't read one of. Is it your first novel, The Lost Thumb?
Yes.
Your debut.
Yes.
Tell us about this one.
Oh, it's very dark. You have to be in the mood for it. I was very lucky with Rónán. He was on the way to some book awards when he tweeted about reading 160 pages in one go, which was just changed everything. It was just amazing. It's the story of two sisters who think they are twins, who live with their mother, who's very cruel. And it's about how the outside world can think everything is okay because you don't say anything, but the inside world isn't. So it does have sort of emotional and physical abuse in it. And it all spirals from their mother for the first time ever going away for a night when they're 15, and what happens from there. And there's just one local person. It's set in Australia, actually. I lived there for a while, and it's just one person locally who thinks, I'm not sure everything's okay in that house. It's about them wanting freedom from their mother. Yeah.
Well, the fact that you said that they think they're twins makes me want to start reading the novel immediately. And this is a really nervous question. I'm nervous asking you this question. Is it a spoiler to explain why you called it The Lost Thumb? I'm nervous.
Shall I tell you? Shall I tell you? I haven't read it.
It's up to you.
No, I'll tell you because it's in the first chapter. Okay, this is how it starts, so you can decide, okay, I need to be in the right mood for this. When the children are 7, the mother is really cross with one of them that she keeps sucking her thumb, and the mother's a nurse and she won't stop sucking it no matter how much the mother's told her. So the very first scene is one of the children, they're given hot chocolate as a treat, which they never get. And when she wakes up in the morning, the top of her thumb's missing and she's got all these bandages on it. And the mother just is like, I told you to stop sucking your thumb. and there you go.
Okay, well, that I did ask you, so I can't do anything. That's fascinating. You are an Irish writer. Would you describe it, either of these books, or there's one more we haven't talked about yet, as being in some way Irish?
No, they're not set there at all. I've moved all over and lived in lots of places. You can tell by my accent probably. So I lived in Ireland when I was younger, and then my dad worked for Bank of Ireland. So then we moved around a lot every sort of couple of years. And then I did drama, so started talking like this as well. And also just wherever I moved, within 2 weeks, I would generally have the accent of that place and sound like I'd been born and bred there. Yeah, suddenly I'll go Bath instead of Bath or things like that. But no, not Irish books. One's Lost Thumb is Australia, just because it had to be somewhere. Part of the story is there's really big skies, and that either had to be somewhere in America, like when you see these huge skies that go on for miles, but I'd never been there. Whereas Australia, I'd travel around a lot and lived in, and I could really picture the heat and the sky and this very, very isolated town where it's somewhere where you go, it's hundreds of kilometers from somewhere else, and that vastness, you know.
Well, I hope you'll set one of those kinds of novels in Canada someday, Orla.
Oh, I know. I would really want to go to Canada so much because I love walking, and I looked up where you live and it looks beautiful. I looked up some images. I was like, wow.
Very nice of you to say. And where is Christ on a Bike set?
That's set. It's partly in Hackney, which is in East London, but mainly 90% in West Wales, in Pembrokeshire. Do you know it? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Oh, if you there's a church in it called Munt, which is MWNT, and after reading it, if you look it up, that's the church in it, which features heavily, is very real, and the beach is real, and the hill is real, and it's incredibly beautiful. So
wonderful. Well, I will find a picture of it now. It'll be on the screen while we're talking about it, so that'll be great. Do you think you have an Irish novel in you that's wanting to come out at some point in your future writing career?
yes, definitely. I've already got bits written for one that's, or at least starts in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. So yes, I've always, even though I've moved around a lot, like I've only ever had an Irish passport and I've only ever said Irish on a citizenship form. So I really want to go. I haven't been for quite a while, so I really want to go back. Yeah, definitely.
The more I'm learning about you in this conversation, the more you were reminding me of, and I've never talked to her, but just what little I know about her and her books, the writer Cerys Davis, who is Welsh, but I don't think very much of her fiction is set in Wales. It's set in America and God knows where else. Yeah.
Ah, my eldest daughter's called Caris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't there a dedication? Didn't I see a dedication to?
Yes.
Yeah. So there
Well
you go.
remembered.
Yeah. Ian, Cerys, and
Oh,
Aaron.
yeah. So I must read some of her books. I haven't read them actually.
Read two of her books, and her latest one sounds fascinating, and it's set on a Scottish island, I think. So yeah, I want to talk to her about all of that. Can you give us just a quick elevator pitch for the third book that we haven't talked about yet, and then we'll move into hearing what you've been reading recently?
Pa is a prequel to The Lost Thumb, and this I don't see messed up mother I'll use. It's about how she became a mother and the story of her marriage and a teeny bit of her upbringing, but how she became a single mother of two daughters.
So you wrote The Lost Thumb first, and then you wrote the prequel. Do you recommend we read it to the prequel first and then The Lost Thumb, or the order in which you wrote it, or it doesn't matter one whit?
It's up to you. I wrote them purposefully so you can do whatever you want. Maybe ask some readers. I don't know. I mean, I wrote The Lost Thumb first to read it, but a lot of people who read Pa said, "Oh my God, now I'm going to go back and reread The Lost Thumb." So if you're time short, maybe start with Pa.
You're working on, or you have mentioned that there's a sequel to Christ on a Bike coming.
Yeah, I'm working hard on that at the moment. Well, I've got a day job and I'm doing that in the evenings and weekends. I'm about near the end of the second draft, and I'll do a third draft before I'd show it to anyone. I think it needs all the nuance added and things. It's great fun because there's lots of villagers and it focuses more on them and some of the story of how this place came to be. Always planned it when I got to the end of Christ on a Bike. You'll see when you get to the ending, it'll make sense how there can be one.
So you are a serial novelist in terms of what's you've put out and what's coming out. You have two books that are paired in terms of a sequel type of connection. What's that about for you? That's fascinating.
I don't know. I guess the characters are so real and their worlds are, and then there's more about the characters around them as well. So it's only if I really think that can work. I work on a few novels at a time in the sense that I will work really hard on one for a few months and get to the end and go, right, I'm going to put you away in a drawer equivalently for 3 months so I can clear my head of you. But I can't not write. I love writing. So I'll have a week off and then go, Right, I'm going to work on this one now, and I'll do the same with that. So they're sort of in rotation. So I've got a couple of books that are standalone that I'm working on. But yeah, these ones do you know what? I imagine them a lot as TV series and stuff. So I often get to the end and go, do, what would happen now? Right, cut. Right, series 2 coming at 6. In my head, this is how I'm seeing it all. It's I can see their world so clearly. I can see it finishing. I can see people wanting a break from it and then going, yeah, but what happened too? And then, right, I've got another one coming.
So, Orla Owen, the reader, what have you been reading recently that you'd like to tell us about?
Obviously love reading, and I read very different books. I'll just read whatever I see is recommended rather than just this sort of type of book. So one book, the first one I'm going to recommend is a book called Birding, and this is the proof copy, so it's not the actual copy, which is very beautiful, by Rónán, who's an incredibly talented writer in Glasgow, and not only a writer, an artist, which blows my mind because I can't draw or anything. I'm terrible at, I can't even cut paper straight. And she does these amazing watercolor drawings, I think they are as well. So this is just a really beautiful book set in Brighton about different characters whose lives interlink. Fantastic characterization and great dialogue. And yeah, really recommend that.
Birding itself is somehow involved in the story.
Yeah, just at the very end. Just at the very end, you go, oh, okay, that's where the title's from. That's very cool. She's wonderful. If you follow her on Twitter or Instagram, she does she's beautiful with all this big pink hair and amazing makeup, incredibly, wonderfully sort of artistic. She's amazing. Yeah, really cool. Really cool. Another book I really enjoyed. So I do read on my Kindle at night when I sleep really badly because I often don't sleep great, or I'll have chunks of time where I don't sleep great. And I find the Kindle means I don't wake up as much. So I'm reading In Memoriam by Alice Wynne at the moment, which is just wonderful. I mean, yeah, it's heartbreaking and wonderful. And I didn't know what to expect when I started it. I just knew everyone said it was great. So have you read that?
No, I should. It's a gay story, but I haven't gotten to it yet. I've heard wonderful things about it.
Really recommend it. Yeah.
It's one of those books that I think I've just heard too much about, so I need to wait until I kind of forget what I've heard.
Yeah.
Like when you tell me you love it, that's a different kind of thing. But when there's hype about a book, I tend to back off and I just want to wait until the hype goes down. And then when I'm ready, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, because I never buy hardbacks. So I'm often reading stuff a year and a half later than everyone else because I just find them too heavy and quite expensive. So I'm a real wait for the paperback person. But this, I didn't want to wait and I got it on my Kindle. But it is, yeah, it'll be, man, the books are there forever, aren't they? That's the beauty of them. You can read them whenever you like, whenever you're in the mood for it. I have two more very quickly, and they're all so different. Another on the Kindle that I read when I wasn't sleeping well is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent, which, yeah. So she's an Irish writer. I'd never read any of her books, and it was a brilliant sort of, to use the phrase, page turner that went off in tangents you didn't expect. And I thought was really nicely written and tightly edited. Just really enjoyed it as a read where you're like, oh my god, I'm awake for 3 hours, and it was just that's not to say that's all the book was for. It was fabulous. I thought it was fantastic, and I've since read a few of her books because I thought, oh, she's great. Who is this? And the very last one is Spent Light by Lara Pawson, who I've been lucky enough to do a couple of events with, and she's amazing and wonderful. And this is an incredibly poetic book, and it's a woman's just thoughts in her house usually, and the way she writes is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just sort of mind-blowing, but everyone who's read it is going, wow, the imagery and the language is just beautiful, and some really dark stuff, but then she pulls it back and is talking about love as well. And I think it's fantastic. I think she's very, very talented. Yeah.
Is it written in stream of consciousness?
Yes.
Because it's ringing a bell. It's sounding like, but I bet it's quite different from. But it is sounding a bit like Duck's Newburyport. Would that be an apt comparison?
Yeah, do you know, I didn't read all of that.
Oh, I
This
didn't. I didn't either.
oh
I couldn't. I couldn't get through it. But
yeah, so I did read all of this, so that probably tells you everything. I found with Duck Name, it was too. Did it have punctuation or did I miss that? Was that one of the one long sentence things?
it was, I think, maybe 3 sentences over the 700 or 800 pages or
Okay,
something. Yeah.
yeah. So this isn't like that. Again, one of those things where you go, well, I don't know anything from the title about what this will be or from the cover. It's incredible. And it's had amazing reviews, lots of reviews in the papers of people sort of loving it. And I think it's, how long is it? Yeah, 135 pages. Beautiful.
All very interesting recommendations. I am hoping to have Orla Owen back on my channel once I've read some of her books. So I look forward to having you back once that happens. And I think I'm even going to invite you back for some other bookish reason before that. Will you come back, Orla?
I would love to. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yes, Orla Owen. I can't wait to read her stuff. She was an absolutely fantastic guest. All right, this week on BookTube, I've been fairly busy. I put up an episode of Zooming In with Cecilia talking about annotating, writing in books, which was fascinating. I put up a longer than usual book haul. I think I'm going to remove the word we from these series where I'm making them shorter and maybe make fewer of them shorter because I think that works out better. When people see we in my title, I don't know what goes through their mind consciously or subconsciously, but I'm going to remove it from all future videos. So there's a average length book haul for your viewing pleasure. And my first standalone book review of the year, a wonderful graphic memoir of Chinese history and family dynamics, intergenerational trauma, and Asian American. From China via Hong Kong to America, the Asian experience. Just incredible. Feeding Ghosts by Tessa Hulls, and that is what I have managed to put out. So I finished 3 books, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Let's just segue right into this memoir, Feeding Ghosts, a graphic memoir by Tessa Hulls. It's her first published book, and it came out earlier this year. I loved it with all my heart. If you are interested in history, if you are interested in family dynamics, if you're interested in really hot quality graphic nonfiction, this is your book. I think I'm just going to leave my comments that brief and let you check out my full review for more. This is one of the most impressive works of graphic literature I've ever read. On my recent video where I reckoned with the fact that I was supposedly reading 52 books and that was absolutely insane, and I culled it down to 15, and going forward I would not allow myself to go above 14 or 15 at one time. So this one was extra, but the one little escape clause I had in that agreement with myself, the one little bit of wiggle room I allowed, was that if I wanted to read a book that was going to take me over 15, I had to read it within 7 days or less. Between my Friday reads, basically. So that's what I did with this one, because I got it from the library, and then I expected to be able to renew it, but somebody else must have put a hold on it, so I couldn't renew it. And I was hoping to read it for both Mental Health May and the Asian Readathon. I don't know if it's actually officially happening, but usually there's an Asian Readathon in May. And I had to return it. It's already now a couple of days overdue, but I'll take it back right away. So I decided to use the escape clause in my agreement, and I read it over 7 days. So that's the first time I've done that. It worked very well. I'll probably do it again, and I still managed to finish another 2 books. So go me! I finally finished this novel, Cormorant Lake, by Faith Merino, a debut novel that was published in 2021. It was one that I pre-ordered. I remember that year. I guess I was making tons of money, and I decided not only to make a new releases I'm most looking forward to in 2021 video, but I actually pre-ordered them all, paid for them. That's what pre-order means, Shawn. And this was one of them, and I have no idea how I heard about it. I got it soon after publication. It has been languishing on my shelves, and this was included in my if I don't read these books or bail on them or do something with them in 2024, I have to unhaul them video. And this is the first one that I have done that with. And I did finish it. I considered bailing a few times because it wasn't particularly my kind of book, but the writing was so strong and the atmosphere was so interesting. And really the characters in a certain sense were full drawn enough that I couldn't not finish it. But I didn't like it very much. 4 stars. That's what 4 stars mean in the world of Shawn the Book Maniac. If you like kind of, it's not really thriller, but there's a, and it's not magical realism. There's a bit of a kind of an occult vibe. There are ghosts, and the ghosts didn't bother me, but there was things in it that didn't make sense unless you were really into that kind of surreal or not quite realistic vibe, and it was unsettling, and I enjoyed the unsettling part, but too much of the story didn't quite cohere for me. That being said, it's a really fascinating story about motherhood and absent mothers and foster mothers and mothers wannabe. Holy smokes, a lot of interesting, and child neglect and addiction and poverty. Our protagonist, Evelyn, she leaves her home. It's kind of a share house where there's just a bunch of people that are just kind of roommates. And she takes one of her roommates, who's a severe drug addict, takes her 2 young kids because this drug addict woman has abandoned them for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so she takes them home to her foster mothers, a long drive from the city, in the mountains and the woods, and raises them. And then all the secrets of these generations of women, none of whom are raising their natural children, and all of that on spools. And it was fascinating. It didn't quite make sense to me. I couldn't not keep reading. And I almost put it down when this protagonist, she starts working at this local swimming pool, and there's a really hot young lifeguard or something working there. And he has a pregnant woman fetish, so he is always chasing after pregnant women. Our protagonist is not pregnant, but she has some strange obsession with him, and one day bites him at work on the face. What the hell is going on? That was never really explained, but it was still interesting. I said, what? So if you like weirder stories than I do, I think you should give this a try. And I would try something else the author wrote. It wasn't completely satisfying. I'm glad I read through to the end. And I have also finished the latest Elizabeth Jane Howard novel that I've been reading, Something in Disguise, published in 1969. Oh my God, I love this. Through reading and loving this to the depth that I have, I'm now much more comfortable with where Elizabeth Jane Howard's writing style is going and the atmosphere she's creating in her books, because this one had a lot of dark themes again, but it was also hilarious. There was a lot of comedy in it. A lot of family foibles with dark undertones, and the foibles were hilarious and the undertones were chilling. The quote-unquote patriarch and matriarch are the Colonel, he's usually called the Colonel, and his second or third wife, May. The opening chapter is his daughter Alice's wedding, and May, from her first marriage, has 2 grown children who don't live in this monstrosity of a house that the Colonel browbeat his new second wife into buying for them to live in, and she's the only one taking care of it. That's one of the reasons Alice married a man who was almost as much of a nincompoop as her dad was, to get out of that house, because the Colonel wanted to live in this big house. It's not beautiful, it's just a big monstrous house, and he doesn't lift a finger to do anything, of course. And May is dragged off her feet. And there's a big old cat that I couldn't stand because I don't really like cats. That was one of the main characters in the book. The real main character is May's daughter, Elizabeth. She's about 20 and she's kind of virginal. She goes and stays with her brother in London. And becomes a cooking temp. I'd never heard of that. Maybe it's a British thing, or was, where she signed up with an agency and then people would just hire her to come over and cook dinner for them for a dinner party or something. And the madcap adventures she gets into at work were delightful to read about, but then she ends up meeting a guy and falling in love with him. So that is one of the central plots. Alice, the Colonel's daughter, disastrous marriage, and May's son is this very witty ne'er-do-well who can't hold down a job, doesn't really want to work, just wants to marry somebody rich. So through that setup, various themes about marriage and wealth and obtuse maleness are explored. And May herself, the matriarch, She's a few bricks shy of load in a really lovable way, and so she ends up getting taken advantage of by just about everybody in the book. And then it comes to a very dramatic ending that when I was 3 pages from the end, I thought, oh, she botched the ending. Oh my God. But then I turned the page and something that I thought had happened, it was flipped on its head and it hadn't happened, so that it made the ending perfect, but incredibly dramatic. This was a buddy read with my friend Leah in Calgary, and she's a little bit late, so I'm dying to hear her thoughts on the last section. But I absolutely loved it, and apparently it was made into a mini-series or something in the 90s or 80s, so I'm going to look that up. Absolutely loved Something in Disguise. So, I finished 3 books, but one of them was that Escape Clause book, so it doesn't count. So I'm now down to 13 current reads, and I am going to replace both of those slots because I've got things I just need to read people. And I'll tell you about one other one that I'm going to start next week, because there's not going to be a Friday Reads next week, all right? So in place of the Elizabeth Jane Howard, I am now going to finally read, it has just come out last year, but Blackouts by Justin Torres. I'm going to be talking about this on an upcoming podcast. Won't say any more about that, keep you in suspense, but that episode is going to be taped at the end of May. And now that I've finished one of the books that I have to unhaul if I don't deal with them somehow, read them, bail on them, or whatever, by the end of the year, I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm not doing them in any order, but the next one I've picked out of that list of, I think it was 12 books, 8 books, is a somewhat recent, like 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh my goodness, how time flies. A Canadian novel, Watching You Without Me by Lynn Coady. I know Lindy read it. She read it right when it came out, and she said, oh, Shawn, I hope you read it soon so we can talk about it. Well, that was 5 years ago. I'm finally going to get to it. The protagonist moves back to her childhood home in Nova Scotia to be the caretaker for her older sister who has a developmental disability. Well, that sounds like a fascinating premise, and it's time. Probably by the end of this weekend, I will have finished reading Marzahn Mon Amour to my cousin Mary Jean by the German writer Katja Oskamp, translated from the German by Joe Heinrich. So once that's done, Mary Jean has asked me to then move on to Volume 2 of the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. She and I both have had some time to think about Volume 1 and how it was really just a setting the stage type of volume, and that we really need to keep on and see how Volume 2 goes. So we're going to get started with that quite shortly. So, again, no Friday Reads next week. There'll be videos for you to watch between now and when you see me in 2 weeks for another Friday Reads. And that's what I have to say for now. Thanks for watching.